We will continue now with talks. Our next speaker is Vid Stimac. He's project manager at UNDP. In his presentation, Vid will oppose arguments why governments should stay away from IT development, with arguments why, in fact, they should delve into AI development. This presentation is a blend of theoretical management literature with his own hands-on experience managing AI implementations. Vid, you can speak.
You. Is this working? Oh, wow. I think this is the first time I have a microphone headset. Thanks. Yes, should governments develop their own AI solutions? So before I dwell into that, I'll need to tell you a little bit about myself and a little bit about the project that I'm managing, because all the insights that are going to follow are actually based on hands-on experience, right? So, and a couple of people asked me, I moderated a few sessions over the past few days. They were like, are you a civil servant? Are you a data scientist? What's going on here? And the answer is all of the above. So I graduated in econometrics and operations research, which for the younger ones in the crowd is what data science was called before it was cool. I published in health economics, development economics, labor economics, information systems, and then in public management. But I also have some private sector experience, worked a lot in management consulting, had my own startup, managed software engineers, and then made a full circle and came back to the public sector. And when I came back to the public sector again, I got to manage what I feel is the coolest project in all of development in all of the world. So anyway, the project is called Harnessing AI for the Common Good, facilitating an AI-friendly ecosystem in Serbia. And it's a government-funded project, which is managed by UNDP. And I'm the project manager on that in the team for digital innovations. And the project has, I think, 3 relevant components. Here we go. The project maintains the AI platform in Kragujevac. So we have a team working on ML ops and making sure that the A100 cards that we have stacked there, 32 of them, are actually being used by startups and researchers, and they can be used. It also supports the Institute for Artificial Intelligence. So all of their advisory work, which is done for government, goes through the project, and they're compensated for that, which is a great perk. I have over 40 researchers of AI on speed dial, and because they go through my project, they actually pick up the phone when I call them. And a lot of the stuff that's being done in the public sector actually goes through the AI Institute. And obviously, there's also a delivery unit, as I like to call them, or team for artificial intelligence that's working from the Prime Minister's office that's driving AI regulations. So maybe you saw these things about level 3 testing with autonomous vehicles. That's the team, the ethical guidelines, that's the team, and implementations in the public sector. So this is the angle where I'm coming from. It's been a very wild year doing AI implementations in the public sector. And there's a lot of learnings. So I have some experience as a product manager for data products in the private sector. I worked in financial engineering as well, making like financial derivatives and all these things. And coming then in the public sector, I found out that some things are much harder, but some things are much easier, and we'll get to that. So should governments develop their own AI solutions? I think everybody who asks this question, the intuitively goes like, not really, right? But when you think about it rationally, things might change. So let's start with IT projects, right? So this is why people go, oh, no, governments shouldn't build their own AI solutions, because AI solutions are IT solutions. And governments generally really suck at IT. And there's a reason why governments suck at IT, because it's structural. It's by design. It's not because governments don't want to do it. It's because governments are built in a certain way that's not really compatible with IT development, right? So for starters, governments plan up front. There's waterfall planning. There's all of these projects. Everything needs to be set in stone before you start doing a single thing. And by the way, I will mention examples, and because a lot of these projects that we're doing are ongoing, and it's obviously government, and it's center of government, it's a little bit sensitive. I will not name any organizations or particular individuals, but every example that I give you will be from practice. And even if it seems that I'm making fun of them, I'm not. I think everybody that's working together with us on these things, however hard it is, however many growing pains we have, are pioneers. And we should be proud of every single government institution that's participating in this. I really believe that. Anyway, to give you a funny example here, there was an R&D project on which we're working, where we needed to get the planning, all the planning up front. So the demand was, we need to have an end-to-end solution, and we need to have everything planned. But it's an R&D project. If I want an end-to-end solution where I budget everything until the end, I need at least a technical specification, and my technical specification is coming somewhere third along the line, right? So they're asking you something that you are going to build up in the future. So what do you do in such a situation? Just write something in the budget and passes. Anyway, governments plan up front. IT development requires agile. Like everybody who's done any software knows how that works, right? In government, decision makers are generally very far removed from end users, right? It's also by construction. These are huge systems. And IT development requires a very close interaction, as close as possible between developers and end users, just because it's so complex, because you can get so many things wrong. Government employs civil servants at best, professional project managers at times, but IT development requires engineering managers and product managers, which are very hard to find in government. We're working something with Moldova right now as well, trying to get IT capacities into their ministries. And getting product managers and engineering managers in there is extremely hard, not least because of the remuneration, you know, how much you can pay them, but also just attracting these type of people. Governments generally combine a lot of stakeholders. Again, this is something which is done by design. And this comes with varying scope creep, right? So the more people you involve, a lot of people have to give their own needs, etc. And this just kind of expands. Everything turns kind of balloons and mushrooms up, while IT development requires clear scope and a single client to focus on. It's already hard enough like that, right? So we got a lot of reasons, and I can go on about this, right? But these are the most salient ones. I have a laser pointer as well. So what's the result of this? Public IT projects are the budget overshoot champions of all public infrastructure projects. So this is a study from 2009, but there's plenty of them. I like the graphic here, right? So this is the average budget overshoot of IT projects, and this is the average budget overshoot of other infrastructure projects, right? So can you imagine trying to build a bridge with varying scope creep, right? Or imagine, you know, like all of these things are much more, IT is infrastructure, and it gets really complicated in the context of governments, right? So the bigger they are, the more they overshoot. And this is by design, right? So it's not, again, it's not that governments should be good at this. Government institutions are conservative by design. They're built like that because we want stable services. Can you imagine going, you know, getting your, for instance, your unemployment benefits and then coming there like, oh yeah, today we're trying something else, agile. You're going to get them like 20 bucks a day, you know, come every day to pick it up again. Like these are not things that we want from government. So there's structural issues. And this, you know, what it leads to is that governments that are good at IT development projects are generally those that are good at outsourcing them, right? So this is what we hear. And not only that, let's be frank, governments that are good at IT development projects are rich governments, where mistakes cost less. So, you know, in development economics, or in general in development, you have like people from the West coming and giving you lectures on how to do it, and this is how we do it over here, look at the good results. But when you kind of dig deeper, and I did actually in my previous academic life, we studied public administrations all over Europe. When you dig deeper, it's just the same mess, but with more money, so it hurts less, right? But generally speaking, this is the deal. So people generally tend to transfer this to AI development, right? So they go like, okay, AI is IT, so, you know, let's change it. But I will argue, from personal experience, both theoretical and personal experience, that the picture starts to tilt when we're talking about AI, right? So again, especially when we're talking, for instance, in public sphere, right? So these are things that we care about: education, health, employment. I mean, these are things where we want to have efficiencies. These are things where we want to have cheaper services, so we can spend more on people rather than on the process, right? So then things start changing. For starters, data, right? So if you're doing, for instance, medical AI, your biggest issue is data. right? Getting access to it, privacy concerns, getting it from hospitals. Just moving data away from a hospital to a private hard drive requires I don't know how many contracts, etc. When you're working with the government, like we are, we have the government data center. We can shift data around within government, if we just get the right legal frameworks, we'll get to that, without an issue, right? So this is a big thing. For instance, then, we all know that the biggest cost in AI, I hope we all know, is actually training the machines. So if we're talking, for instance, about getting your training sets right. So if we're talking, for instance, about medical AI, the AI researchers are, and sorry, Nicola, are relatively cheap, right? Nicola is working here on mammography, artificial intelligence, for instance, one of our projects. They're relatively cheap. Clinical experts are a pain in the neck, right? Apart from being a pain in the neck, they're also very expensive. You need to annotate all the data, all of this stuff. If you're in the private sector, you need to recruit them, right? You need to pay them. You need to get them past. You need to recruit them as well in the public sector. But for instance, here, they already work for you, right? The legal frameworks to get these people employed are easier. It's still hard, but it's easier if you already have somebody on contract, or if there's some kind of relationship, with these public institutions, be there, for education, for energy, for all of these things, public infrastructure, and we're working in all of these sectors. It's much easier when they already work for you, right? Private sector AI requires regulatory sandboxes, right? So there's a lot of lobbying going on, people trying, can we test this here, can we test it there? We're working now with autonomous vehicles, allowing autonomous driving, autonomous vehicle testing in Belgrade. There was a bunch of firms that spent a lot of time lobbying the government in order to get that done. When you're the government, the whole country is your regulatory sandbox. It's not a joke. It's really like that, right? So think about it. Like, let's say we build an AI product for medical imaging, right? And you want to get to use it. You don't get to use any medical device without it being included in medical protocols, right? So doctors follow protocols, right? That's a whole lobbying process. But if you're working from the Ministry of Health, you're already there, right? So you have access to the regulators. You are the regulator in a way. And again, it's not easy. Things don't happen like this within government. It takes effort. Even if you have political support from the very top, things are hard. But they're not prohibitively hard, as they tend to be from the private sector, right? And private sector AI must focus on single products often. Within government, you start with a portfolio of products. So I'll name the medical imaging example again. For instance, what we're doing with medical imaging, we decided, because we foresee a number of medical imaging products, we decided to invest in building annotation software. So usually annotation software, for annotating, they're done a little bit like Photoshop, right? So, people need to click, and et cetera, et cetera. But annotations are the biggest part of your budget, right? You want to make the UX well, right? You want it to go fast. So if I know that I need 10,000 images for one, annotated images for one product, 10,000 images for another product. If I have 50,000 images in mind, then the investment decision to actually invest in software that will allow you to do that at an industrial scale makes sense. If I can halve the time of a single annotation, I just doubled my budget. For a single product, that does not necessarily make sense. But if you start knowing that you have a portfolio of products, it's a different investment decision, right? So, and I can, by the way, go on, and I hope we can have a lively discussion about all of that. I'll try to answer all the questions without naming anybody in particular, because again, that's another thing when working with government, you need to be sensitive. But there's one other thing which I only realized halfway going, and it's the best part of all. No sales. There's no sales. There's no parasites taking 35% of your, there's none. When we finish, we just deploy. Okay, you do user testing, you want this stuff to work, you want to be responsible, you want to check with people, but you just deploy. There's the radiological information system that's connected to 180 institutions in Serbia. Once we get our model right, we're going to build it into that. And we're going to start using it. Now imagine, development, IT development is hard, but imagine the entire rest of the process. It's compressed, right? So this mammography AI software, and Nicola here, he already has the neural net in the government data center, for already prototypes going. But this idea was conceived in February this year. in February. Very high chance that by mid next year we will have deployed that solution. Now, anybody working on medical AI, talk to me. 18 months from conception to deployment? Is government AI that inefficient? I don't know. I mean, for me, this was like, I just at one point realized, wait a second, we're not going to sell anything. The sales is done up front. Anyway, so we also learned some things, and we keep learning every day, and it's a super exciting field, right? So what have we learned so far piloting? Because we're basically piloting. So there's a number of projects going on that we see as pilots of pilots, right? So, we're trying to learn, as you move along, you bump into barriers. You notice that, and we'll get to that, right? So what have we learned? First of all, when you're selling AI in government, sell it as a cost cutter. Don't sell it as an innovation. Don't sell it as some new service or something. Governments are generally interested, and I'm really sorry to say, in cutting costs. They don't need ideas on how to spend money, right? Somebody comes into a minister, they know how they want to spend money, they just don't have it. They don't need you coming there and giving them new ideas. But if you come there and you cut costs, you're going to free up budget, and then they're going to be able to spend it on their stuff. It's a much better sales pitch. I mean, it's very funny. I had a talk with a professor a while back. It was some product that he wanted to place, AI product that he wanted to place in government. And I'm trying to get the use case from him. I'm trying to get this cost cut. And he goes like, yeah, and it's really good for health, and it's really good for public health. And at one point I go like, bro, like, do you think anybody walks into the Ministry of Health and goes like, hey, I got this stuff. Can we do this? It's really bad for public health, right? So they have plenty of ideas. They don't have money. So when you're selling AI, sell it as a cost cut. Find use cases that can show how much cost it can, and make sure that's simple as well, especially if you're doing the first project. Something where you can easily calculate how much money you saved. That's going to help you with follow-up projects. Data, more data, and data costs. This has not changed in the past 20 years that I've been working with data. And it's the same with AI. Of your AI model development costs, sorry again, Nicola, you're cheap, like 80 to 90% are data related. Know that, right? It's not an issue to get smart young people to work on these projects. It's not an issue to get even the IT development. Getting the data right is the thing that costs the most money. And by the way, this has always been the case. Regression analysis, etc. Running your OLS takes a minute. By getting the data right so you can actually run it takes most of the time. And it's the same on the bigger scale as well. Developers, they cost money. You would be surprised how many people budget AI projects thinking that they can get away without paying developers. Right? And this is most of your budget. Again, AI developers, AI scientists are cheap. Developers are market-priced. Regular, boring market-priced IT development is a huge chunk of your development budget. Make sure that your beneficiaries or your stakeholders or your clients, however you want to call them, understand this up front. Right? It needs to enter the budget. I like to explain it like workers, right? You need somebody, it's great to have this great innovative AI model, but you need guys like, to screw together the API, to build these. And these guys, they can choose to work for you, or they can choose to build, I don't know, some website for some pharmacy chain in southern Germany or whatever, right? This needs to be, I cannot emphasize this enough. When I started this, there were some workflows, work streams, there, and AI development work streams. I'm trying not to mention any names. Half of them stalled because nobody priced in the development costs. It's extremely important upfront. People do not know this. People who are not in software development do not know this upfront. Legal frameworks. This is what I was talking about earlier, when they wanted to have the end-to-end solution before I even knew what the solution was, right? This is your biggest hurdle, and it's upfront. You get this right, there is no sales. You get this right, there is no regulatory sandbox that you need. But you need to get this right up front. So if you're working with a beneficiary, working with governments, everything is legal framework. Make sure you start these conversations immediately. So as soon as you got something of a hook when you're pitching, immediately ask for the legal counsel. I'm telling you this because I got heavily burnt, not getting this right, thinking oh, come on, we're just agile and we're going to get this right, etc. We're doing it's good stuff. It's good for public health, right? So this can really kill you. And it might seem trivial, But in the public sector, there's people motivated by public service, right? I mean, I think the previous session was on therapy. I discuss my public service motivation with my therapist every 2 weeks. And I always tell my colleagues, once we're finished, I'll finally quit. But there's a lot of people with a savior complex within public government. Find them. These are people that will go an extra mile. These are people that will support you when you mess up all of the things above. And they did. And that's what I'm saying, like when I said, like I can make fun of governments, but every single institution, every single person that we're working with, they're very well motivated and they do understand. It's just very hard to navigate within governments. And you need their help. You're not smarter than they are. This is their turf that you're working on. Make sure that you find somebody who can hold your hand and guide you through this process. It's extremely important and often overlooked. So, that was the talk. Oh, wow, 7 more minutes. I think we can shoot the questions. Yes, Max.
Thank you very much. Yeah. First of all, let's make a bit of fun. Tell us about Big Brother project.
We don't actually have Big Brother projects. This is something that's, again, people think that when you're within government, you can. It's very funny. People think that within government you can do whatever you want, and you can't do anything at all. And the truth is somewhere in between, right? Getting big projects done, Big Brother projects done. It's a huge. It's a huge issue because of the legal frameworks which are involved, and these are actually respected within government. Somebody's going to come up and say, where's data protection, etc. I know that because we have some surveillance projects going on, which do not identify people, right? They identify people as individuals. So we're working on securing critical infrastructure, and then having the cameras augmented so that they can spot people being in zones that they're not supposed to be. But that, for instance, does not identify a single individual. It just identifies an object as an individual and then alerts a dispatcher that they're running across the railway track, etc. So, at least, and I don't actually think that we have that many Big Brother projects because I've been working, when we're working on this, it was the intelligence agencies and the cops and whatever, and they didn't seem to me like they had everything covered. So, in that regard. But I think that, that's a different type of story, right? That's a story about control, and AI helps with that, but every other type of digitalization helps with that as well. We had, the stuff with the, NSA and stuff like that, with the swooping dragnets, and it was all before AI was that in. So, hope that answers. We're not big brothering. At least they're not involving me in the big brothering part. Maybe I'm too much of an idealist, so they kind of skip.
Could you speculate about self-learning hardware, software? How could it help with the data amount problem, with the big data problem? Thank you.
Well, you know what? I mentioned this a while ago at another talk that I was moderating the other day, or maybe another talk that I was just involved in. Generally speaking, all of this super advanced stuff requires super advanced infrastructure, which, frankly speaking, unfortunately does not exist, right? So governments have a huge issue with managing the data that they have. It's like sitting on huge oil fields and not knowing how to drill a hole, right? So before we get to any type of stuff like that, we first need to get some data engineers into government so that we can actually extract the data that we need and use it. I think eventually that's going to be very useful, but again, we're a couple of stages before any type of advanced kind of self-learning reinforcement systems, etc. I know you live in the future, and it's somewhere in that future of yours, I think we'll get to it.
Hello, Mr. Stimac, thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting. I'm here.
Hi.
All right. Just a brief comment, if I may. I think that government will be definitely pressured to develop their own AI products, because AI is already something that is something like a strategic enabler in broader sense, right? So in order to compete effectively with other nations, with other governments are going to be in a position where they must innovate and where they must adopt all those stuff. And if you want to adopt something that is comparatively good, you would have to do it internally. because of the issue of safety, let's say, or security.
Sovereignty.
Definitely, yes. So I think that this speech is important for that reason, because, for example, not many people are thinking in that sense that, okay, private sector is more efficient than the government. But then again, we are living in a very strange period where, again, the issue of sovereignty of the nation state comes into the light, despite the interdependence in financial and economic terms. So that's what I wanted to mention. If you can provide a brief comment, and that's it. Thank you very much.
I would completely agree with that, right? So I mean, governments are involved in certain sectors not because they're good at it. It's because they have to be involved. Why do governments do education? Why do governments do health? Because we want to control outcomes, right? So in that sense, in terms of AI, let's talk about language models, right? Large language models. We're still trying to get that. There was some talks about that here. We're still trying to kind of get that going within Serbia. Because, like, forget about chatbots. Let's talk about back office optimization, right? Public sector is a bunch of forms and documents going all around, right? So basically speaking, the next step for AI, if you ask me, is to cut back office costs, right? And you can cut them by order of magnitude, literally an order of magnitude. Something costs an hour, it's going to cost minutes. Right before you scale that at the level of government, you have enormous cost cuts. Again, resources that you can use for something else, like delivering services, or maybe lowering some taxes and increasing services, investing in some things which are important, where you can't cut costs or you shouldn't cut costs, right? So if you do that, but you're running on some foreign country's API, right? And then you say something wrong on the international stage, and they shut down your government, right? So, I mean, it's a sovereignty issue as well. But it's a long road, right? So, like when I say we're piloting, I'm talking about building internal capacity. Like literally teaching individual actors within government what this is, what these processes look like, what they can expect from it. Because that's the first step to internalizing capacity. First introducing it to people, right? And then, getting it. But I will completely agree with you that this is strategic, right? And AI, again, selling it as a cost cutter. Once you do cut these costs, you want to be in control. You can't even do it with the private sector. Internal country private sector is already risky. You give the private sector too much leverage. I mean, I was in the private sector. I worked with Wall Street bankers. You don't want to give them leverage over anything, right? Especially not critical services, right? So I would completely agree with that.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the talk. So coming to this talk, I was thinking that you will talk about like AI that works alongside with the government, and I don't know, something like Serbia AI or Moldova AI or whatever. And but you instead talk about really practical solutions that can be implemented now. And I also understand your point that you need to teach governments what is possible and like get the approval and get them familiar with the technology. So my question is, do you think we are going there where government AI is not like only doing something in medical or regulating transport or something like that, but also like making decisions and helps to formulate new laws, or like gives you hints on what to do next, and I don't know, we can fantasize what can happen in that field. And especially I'm interested, how are people inside the government, what do they think about? Because like I have a dread of that I might be getting replaced by AI in the near future. So
you're a developer?
Yeah.
Proper dread. No.
Yeah. No, thank you for affirmation. Yeah, and so what is people who work in government, what do they think about it?
Well, first of all, that's a very good question. First of all, making decisions, they're not there yet. Even when they get there, you don't want to sell it like that, right? So most of the things they think about, there's personal interest in doing something innovative, making your own career and that kind of stuff, and that's important. And the second thing is really cost cuts, right? So in terms of like making decisions for you, I mean, you know, the difference between, I guess, statistical analysis and AI is that, you know, or data science and AI is that data science brings, you know, the insight and then somebody makes the decision. And with AI, you kind of automate the other parts to it. So any AI implementation is already influencing decisions, right? So if we're talking about medical AI, this is your second opinion, right? Yeah, so it's, you know, the doctor looks at you, but then there's a second opinion as well. So if they see something, for instance, I mean, just very bluntly put, for mammography, we have a huge issue here in Serbia about waiting lines for mammographs to get read. And people don't understand why it takes 5 to 6 months for somebody to get their reading. That's because they don't know the whole chain, right? So if you get a reading, right, and there's something suspicious, it needs an ultrasound, it needs a biopsy, where the bandwidth is much smaller, and that's why these things take so long. So what you do with AI is you're trying to kind of, and by the way, this is all happening because from primary healthcare institutions, women are sent. You know, a doctor there, a radiologist of, you know, general radiologist, sees something suspicious, doesn't know, not specialized in breast cancer. Why don't you check that, right? So if you add AI to that, you might get a second opinion and say, hey, this is 99% benign. Check up in 6 months again. It's okay, you know, right? So I understand these doctors, by the way. I would send everybody where I saw anything suspicious. I wouldn't want to have that on my soul. So you're influencing decisions on the micro level, right? On the macro level, I don't think that's happening. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. I think it's going to go like that. I think the way the decisions are influenced is that people are using ChatGPT to fix their documents, right? And all of these things. I think this is kind of the way that decision, that AI actually gets into the senior level decision making. But it's more like kind of like, it creeps up with these micro decisions that are made, right? So for instance, I mean, these are the things if you build, we have some projects on maintenance of these transformers for electrical grid, right? So it kind of gives you a signal when something's, and there's an anomaly, it gives a signal so that somebody will go and check it up, right? So these are decisions. It's the same thing with the critical rail infrastructure that I was talking about. The dispatcher gets a signal. So these are the micro decisions that are being influenced, and this is where you get the efficiencies. I think we're very far away from decisions actually being made by AI within government at the senior level. I'm already happy when they know what AI is. I don't have to explain everything. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, if there is no more questions, I would like to thank Vid for an amazing presentation and to give you a certificate of appreciation for your engagement and conference. We hope to see you.
Hvala.